Hello there, this is AgriTalk right here on KTN Farmers TV, and today we'll be talking about renewable energy and COP27, and we'll be having a conversation on how these two merge together, and also how we as individuals can make sure that we take care of the environment, and also make sure that this both things are working together in terms of making the environment a conducive place. All right, and with me I have Michael Orangi, who is the country manager, Rainforest Alliance, and we are going to be discussing with him about this. Thank you for your time.
Most welcome.
All right, now let's get right into it and look at renewable energy. And when we talk about renewable energy, what do we exactly mean?
When we speak about renewable energy, we basically mean a source of energy that is not depletable, or that is can be replenished in another way to put it. So it's a source of energy that, of course, does not come to an end, like used now, and is exhaustible by evening or by tomorrow. So it's a source that is replenishable, that is always available, that you can always replenish.
Yeah. Now, all right, now we'll still go back to that. But first of all, let us first understand what Rainforest Alliance does, and what is your mantra going forward. Are you all about renewable energy? Are you all about conserving the environment? So just explain to us a little bit about Rainforest Alliance.
Yeah, basically Rainforest Alliance is a global non-government organization and not-for-profit that is in the realm of certification and environmental conservation. But the greater vision of the organization is to see a world where people and nature thrive in harmony. But we are able to do that by using market forces to address the most challenging environmental and social challenges, and of course economic, in our environment where we work. So we work across very many countries, over 75 basically, and we've been in existence for over 35 years, mostly focusing on certifiable crops. This is basically for export, and a lot of work around the forest conservation issues, trying to promote the livelihoods of farmers, and of course the landscapes where these farmers produce their crops and their food from.
All right, very well said, and very informative. All right, now let's also now go back to renewable energy. You had talked about depletable, so explain to us about this, the ones that can't be depleted.
Yeah, so renewable sources of energy basically are the sources that kind of are always available. You know, look at, for example, solar. I mean, you cannot just use solar and exhaust it.
Yes.
So you trap into solar and utilize the solar and convert it into energy that can be utilized. So you have solar today, tomorrow, or even when you do not have it, like those days that are very cold or dark, then you have already stored that energy that will be able to be used over time. You can also look at, for example, wind. It's always flowing. I mean, there's no time that you will say it's not windy, or the wind will always, will stop blowing. So that is what we look at in terms of is always replenishable. It's always available. You cannot exhaust. Look at, for example, flowing water on a waterfall. I mean, it's always coming. Of course, as much as sometimes the water volumes go down, sometimes they're up, but it's always flowing. So those are the kinds of sources that we are talking about. I mean, even plant biomass. There's a lot of trees here, a lot of biomass that you cannot just exhaust in one day. As compared to, for example, when you talk of coal, for example, or oil products that are dependent on volumes in a well, or coal in some space that is you can exhaust when you utilize, or you scoop that kind of coal. So the renewable then the sources that are always there, are always available, are always replenishable. Yeah, and the fact that we talk of them being clean energy or green energy because they do not lead to emission of greenhouse gases to the environment.
All right, and still on this, the sources, when we look at Kenya as a country and embracing these kinds of renewable energy, where are we in terms of embracing them?
Yeah, I will admit that Kenya is doing a lot actually, and we pride that Kenya is leading from the front in Africa in terms of investing in renewable energy sources. Basically, you even had the president mention the other day when he was giving his speech in Egypt during the COP27 that we are around, I mean, most of our sources are around 93% renewable sources. So look at what we are producing from hydropower, wind, geothermal, I mean, solar panels. Yeah, but I believe we are doing a lot, and we are doing great in terms of focusing and investing in renewable energy sources. But we are not yet there still, because, I mean, you go to other developed countries, you see like solar panel villages that supply a lot of solar energy to villages and connectivity to the rural folk. So we still have room to improve, but I think we are doing an amazing job towards adopting renewable energy. And of course, you realize one of the targets that the president has clearly made it clear that the focus towards renewable energy is not going to relent on it. Yeah.
All right, and even speaking about us investing in these sources of renewable energy, what is an area that we have really not tapped into that we are rich in as a country?
There are many sources. Actually, like wind energy, I think a lot of visibility studies have shown that we can still tap a lot of potential into tapping wind energy and converting that into, you know, running our machines and everything else that we need energy for. Solar, not yet there, because I think either it's because of the expenses that are associated with putting up solar panels. There's a lot that we can do. But also even in terms of hydropower, I mean, there are so many, I think a lot of feasibility studies have been done across our rivers, and there's still potential for having mini hydro power generating points. But also look at the ocean. There's a lot of oceanic waves that still can be tapped to generate electricity as well. So we still have a lot. And I think even geothermal, we've done quite a lot in extracting a lot of energy from that. So there's still a lot of potential in, I think, in all fields, I could say.
All right, now let's move on, and you've mentioned COP27. Sure. Let's move on and look at really what the conversation there is all about. Because someone hears, okay, COP27, there was COP26. Yeah. So what is this conversation all about?
Yeah, the COP27 is basically refers to the community of practice, you know, around the climate. The focus is around the climate change. But of course, is a combination of the impacts of climate change, issues to do with food security, issues to do with the energy crisis. I mean, a lot of crises that are happening in the globe. So, but in main focus is about the other COPs, COP26, the Glasgow, and the rest that have happened in the past. We've always had governments promise. Yes. We've had private companies give promises. We've had unions give promises. But the focus in this COP27 that is happening in Egypt is more of a call to action. I mean, we don't want to hear more negotiations now and more promises. We want to see action. So the call is basically that whoever has committed to do something towards combating climate change should now really act and fulfill the promises they have always made. All right, and now when you look at climate change, because this is a really big topic, we've spoken about it, we've made very many stories from climate change. Now, when you look at a country like Kenya, that right now we are undergoing drought as a national disaster.
So what are some of the things that really make this topic just stick with us? Because next year comes, last year it was still the same topic. Next year maybe it will be the same topic. So what is it? What is it making that a country like Kenya, that of course has all these climatic conditions, have the same problem year on of drought?
Yeah, you realize climate change is not just something that happens in one day or happened yesterday. It has been happening over a range of very many years, and they're still happening. So what we are seeing now actually is the effect of what has been happening over a number of years, and not only in Kenya, basically it's all over the globe. Yes. I mean, you cross over to Somalia, it is terrible. Egypt, things are bad. So it's all over. But basically in Kenya, what we are seeing is the recurrence of these droughts time after time, year after year. And I think probably we haven't learned a lot. We haven't put in enough mechanisms to, probably prevent this from happening. But also even when they happen, I think the response mechanism is quite poor because I mean, we've seen what is in the social media. We've seen how people are dying, how livestock is dying, and we could have done something to prevent this. And I remember in a few years, there was this initiative of, already sensing that even from the weather predictions that this will happen. So communities were being requested or being, imposed upon to dispose of, for example, their livestock early in time when they are still alive and make more money that can be used to buy food stuff. But we don't have to wait until people have died, animals have died, then we start reacting. Like now I see a lot of groups, a lot of organizations trying to fundraise to distribute food to the northeastern part of Kenya, which is a shame in a country like ours.
And even with looking at the problem, it's something that has been building over, and now it's spilling. All right, now when we look at in the coming months, a time like now, next year, what do we need to do during this period at least? Of course, not fix the climate magically, but what are some of the things that we can do in order to make sure that at least next year at a time like this, we have even done a quarter of what is supposed to be done?
I think there's a lot that we can do as a country. One is, for example, foster, food production. And I don't mean that we have shortages, but I think we produce quite a lot. But again, the mechanisms of distribution. I mean, if you go to Kitale now, probably there is some people who have maize rotting in the granaries. And we have now people in Northeastern dying of lack of food. So the mechanisms of distribution of the same food, I think, needs to be enhanced so that where we have excess production, the same can be distributed to areas or regions where there is a shortage. But also, I have seen communities in the drier regions through irrigation doing a lot of production of maize, vegetables, and even fruits. So the same can be done, I mean, through purposely targeting irrigation. I mean, we always hear of Israel, for those ones who have been lucky to go there. It's a desert, but they are producing a lot of tomatoes and other fruits and food. And we shamelessly import, from there. So still, we can do a lot in terms of irrigation. And it doesn't have to be very heavy infrastructure. Yeah. I mean, you go to research that has been done by students, for example, in universities. You can have simple structures that conserve water, like water pans in those dry areas, and they can be able to support in food production. Yeah.
All right, and also still looking at this and trying to look at forest cover, our forest cover, especially in Kenya, and the recommendations that have been put and the projections of having a certain number of trees by a certain year. how in terms of doing it? Are we really taking care of our forests? Because, or first of all, is even the forest cover affecting, contributing to this problem that we have?
Yeah. Forest cover plays a big role in terms of sequestering the carbon that is emitted. I mean, if we have a lot of greenhouse gas emissions from the industrial processes, agricultural processes, whatever that we do, the greenhouse gases are emitted, and what helps us is the forests to be able to sequester. I mean, as the trees manufacture their own food, they use the carbon from the environment. Mm-hmm. So the more forest cover we have, the better the sequestration of carbon, and probably the better the cooling of the earth. So what we see, of course, as Kenya, we are doing a good job in terms of, you know, to planting of trees, but also the forest cover that is normally a requirement. Actually, we have it in legislation that every small farm, for example, should have like 10%, you know, tree cover, forest cover. Mm-hmm. I mean, plantations also equally the same. So I don't think we reached there yet. Mm-hmm. But also, I'm aware that there are so many forests that are gazetted and they are depleted or they are dilapidated. So if the government had a targeted effort towards rehabilitation of the same forests, to be a good effort. And I also know that, for example, the Environment Ministry has gazetted quite a number of forests for adoption. So if the private companies moved in to adopt forests, rehabilitate and ensure that those forests are maintained for a good number of years with good vegetative cover, mm-hmm. I think they would really help a lot in terms of sequestering a lot of carbon and other greenhouse gases from the environment.
Mm-hmm. And now let us look at the regions in the ASAL areas that we have in Kenya. How do we maintain even because from research, you can just see the soil in the ASAL regions can really grow very good grass. And when you go there, grass is not, maybe it's just a small area that has grass, the other area is very dry. So how do we maintain and make sure that these areas have even a way of production, and also maintaining, even with the dry climatic conditions in those areas, how do they even survive?
Yeah, I think we've seen some regions actually in the ASAL region, I mean, even developing very nice, expansive forests cover. Mm-hmm. So it's possible. I mean, the only shortage there is water. So if there's a way of getting water to that place and water the trees until they're able to sustain, but of course also look at the vegetation that is able to sustain the high temperatures in those regions. So selection of the good species that can be able to do very well, mm-hmm. and some small water probably before they really take up, that can be possible. And that region can still be turned into a farmland, mm-hmm. into very productive zones, because the soil is not depleted basically. It has not been used to grow. So, and you will end up even using very little farm inputs like fertilizer. So yes. The only shortage is water basically. So once that is applied, and with a lot of, you know, change of acclimatization by establishing like natural forests there, we will be able to change this country.
Mm-hmm. All right. And now, looking at the COP27, we spoke earlier and you mentioned about the promises that governments usually give, the recommendations. So how do we hold them to account? When it comes to next COP, if it will be there, mm-hmm. the next one, and we sit down and look at, okay, these are the recommendations that were put forward. Is there a way of like checking and saying, okay, this is what was promised, this is what has been done?
Yeah, I think most importantly, what needs to be generated is actually to have like a scorecard. We've seen, for example, in Kenya, at the end of each year, people, you know, there's an analysis that is done that this ministry scored very well, yes. You know, something like that. A real scorecard of the nations or even the counties in terms of what are they doing towards combating climate change effects. And if we have a scorecard that can be used to you know, score the performance of various counties, for example, or various countries, then we can be able to come up in a year, for example, to say, such a country has done tremendous job because of this and this and this and these factors that are being considered in the variables that are being considered in the scorecard, and be able to say, yeah, this is how such a country has acted towards fulfilling their promises. And something that is measurable. I mean, we need to have a very efficient monitoring system so that we are able to monitor and evaluate what each county, what each country is doing towards the promises that they have made already. Yeah.
All right. And now let's move on and look at the, of course, the energy sector in our country, looking at also electricity and the connectivity, where you just see like 70% of our country has access to electricity. Now, this other 30%, what can be done in order to make sure that at least they also access, maybe if not all of them, at least even half of them access electricity? Because going forward, and we are getting now into the digital world, we are trying to get into the developing space, the developing world space, or the already developed world. What can be done?
Yeah, I think there's still a lot that we can do as a country, and as much as we boast that we have a reasonable population that access energy, rural connectivity is not still up to scale. But then I think if we targeted, for example, in renewable energy, for instance, like solar, those are very simple, kind of technology that can be used, and that can be used by anybody else in whichever place. Leave alone probably connecting the hydropower connections because of the posts and all have you, or the challenges that come with it, like land where those pathways of the poles needs to go. But solar, I mean, when you promote something like solar, you just have a panel within your homestead, within your village, within your compound, and you're able to generate and access electricity. So that is what I think needs to be promoted. And I think there are good companies that are doing a lot of it. Look at, for example, Copper. I mean, they're doing a lot of supporting farmers or small households access energy. Vuma, biofuels. There are so many companies that again can be probably facilitated to ensure that the rural folks have access to energy, basically. So it's mostly, promoting the renewable energy space, and not really talking about connectivity of the grids to the rural areas. Renewable energy can
help cover that. All right. Thank you so much. Now we are going to take a short break, but we'll be back with Michael, and we are going to be discussing even more of this topic. And don't go too far. We'll be back with more. All right, welcome back. This is AgriTalk right here on KTN Farmers TV. And before we went for a short break, we were talking about renewable energy and also COP27, which is happening in Egypt. And with me, I have Michael Orangi, who is the country manager, Rainforest Alliance. And we were talking about this whole idea of renewable energy. So, Michael, now let's continue and also look at in pushing the narrative of environmental conservation among communities in Kenya. Are we really doing our best as a country or even as individuals?
Yeah, I believe we are doing something, though not the best. Yeah, we're doing at least something. So like the pushing for 10% forest cover,
Yes.
I think it's something that goes a long way towards ensuring that our environment is well conserved. Look at what we are doing with the Environmental Management Act. I think it has a lot of policies, a lot of requirements that if followed to the letter will really keep our environment safe and clean in terms of waste, probably disposal, waste management, and the way probably we use our water resources. Look at, for example, the regulations of the Water Resource Management Authority and the regulations that are around all that, what we are doing with the Kenya Forest Service. So we're doing a commendable job, but still we need to push, especially the 10% forest cover for each of the farms and the general forest cover for the country, because we are still at, I believe, 8%. So if we pushed even to 10%, I think we will be talking of, something that is really commendable, and thereby meaning that the trees are able to, ameliorate a lot of the climate change impacts that we are seeing.
And you as a Rainforest Alliance, when you're working with farmers, trying to engage them in terms of ways of staying afloat, even during climate crisis, what do you usually focus on when it comes to this?
What we've done as an organization, basically, one, in terms of the space for renewable energy, yes, we've really, promoted farmers to embrace renewable energy sources, basically by using a lot of biomass that it goes into waste in our communities, in our households, and converting the same into briquettes, for instance, that can be able to be used as charcoal. And then supporting farmers with infrastructure. Actually, we've been purchasing briquette making machines for quite a number of farmers in the tea landscapes, for example, in the last about 5 years. Then we train them on how to make those briquettes, and then how to also use the briquettes with the support of improved energy cooking stoves that will basically go along with utilization of those briquettes. But also in the manufacturing industry, especially in the tea factories that use a lot of firewood, we are moved into a space where we are encouraging manufacturing of commercial briquettes. For instance, we've supported a manufacturer in Kisumu who uses the waste materials from sugarcane, the bagasse that it goes into waste, and manufacture or use the same as a raw material to manufacture commercial briquettes. And these briquettes will be used as alternatives to firewood in boilers of tea companies. And that goes a long way to reducing the cutting of forests and using of wood fuel, for instance. But we've also, alongside that, supported a lot of farmers with biogas. I mean, constructing biogas plants free of charge. And then so long as they have like 2 or 3 cows that can be able to supplement, sustain the biodigesters. And we've done that in quite a lot of landscapes, both tea and coffee landscapes. But what we are also doing, embracing landscape approaches. So we've targeted and gotten, financing to support formation of what we call landscape management boards. Specifically, we are beginning, for example, with Embu and Kirinyaga counties, where we bring everybody on board. So talk of the county government, the national government, the local institutions of academics, talk of the forestry, wildlife, agriculture, environment, all of them, all the private sectors in that landscape, they come and have a sitting to deliberate on the most pressing issues that need to be addressed in a given county, what we call a landscape. And that is surely yielding a lot of results, where we find everybody is coming on board to, to address and challenge, address all those collective solutions towards a landscape in a way other than just focusing on individual farmers, probably who are certified with our seal for Rainforest Alliance for tea, coffee, avocado, cut flowers, and herbs and spices. But now look at it as a landscape where you bring everybody on board, look at the common challenges that are affecting farmers, churn common solutions, and finance those solutions, identify which partner will do what. And I think that is making a lot of impact in the landscapes where we work.
All right, and also still on supporting farmers. When you look at the weather patterns these days, they're changing. This week there's rain, the following week there's no rain. So how does a farmer stay in production even during this time? What is it that they can do, that one thing that they can do in order for them to even maintain production within this changing climate?
I think what we've done as an organization, as Rainforest Alliance, is to support the farming communities where we work by doing, example, what we call risk mapping. Mm-hmm. So we are able to collect a lot of data, meteorological data, and analyze and say this is a risky region in terms of water, in terms of temperature, and be able to advise farmers in those regions on what needs to be done. And in a way, we are incorporating that with the meteorological department to, for example, come up with early warning systems. You go to a county like Embu, for example, they are doing weather forecasting as a county, using the weather data that is available in the county, and they're able to advise farmers, like, for us, in this county, next week is going to look like this. Next month is going to look like this. And farmers, by getting that knowledge, they're able to know what, proper agricultural activities they need to do. Mm-hmm. So in terms of either planting or land preparation or weeding or herbicide application or whatever. So all those agricultural practices, they're able to be guided by the forecast that has been done, which is, I think, accurate in terms of advising the farmer. This is what you expect in the next coming season or in the next coming week or in the next coming month, which is really assisting farmers to be able to be prepared. And even in terms of, harvesting, so they're able to know if there's a lot of rain, probably some crops that don't need to be rained on, they do early harvesting, or even elements to do with even post-harvest handling. If there is need to harvest and store before dispatching to the market, then that comes in handy in terms of, being able to support farmers both with information and infrastructure in terms of what they need to do handling those produces that they have. Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Now, let's move on and also look at another issue. When you talk about, of course, conserving the environment, it doesn't really go to the government alone. So as an individual, what can someone do in order to make sure that themselves, even where they are, they're conserving the environment, and with this also contributing into the sources of renewable energy? Mm-hmm.
There's so many things as individuals, as counties, as private companies that can do. One is ensuring that we maintain biodiversity, for example. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of vegetation that is going to extinct. We have a lot of animals or amphibians or insects that are going to extinct. So when we become aware about this, then we need to act retrogressively to ensure that we maintain biodiversity, be it of animals, be it of flies, insects, various species of plants, which all of them are useful in our ecosystem. So we need to, enhance the knowledge base of the farmers and the people that, yes, we need to, uphold biodiversity, conserve the biodiversity of all various species that exist in our ecosystem. Mm-hmm. But also in terms of even management of our wastes. It might be seen as a small thing, but still it contributes a lot to regenerating, for example, the greenhouse gases. Like if you dispose wastes and probably decompose badly, it can generate like the methanes we talk of, methane gas to the environment. So it needs to be well coordinated, well collected. The management of our rivers needs to be up to standard, so that we do not deplete our water sources. But also, like I mentioned earlier, trees are very key when it comes to management of greenhouse gases. So if we ensure that a lot of trees are planted on farm, maintain the 10%, and also even the depleted forest needs to be rehabilitated. And all that, as individuals, we have a stake, we have a role to play in ensuring that our environment is safe and the ecosystems where we operate are productive. Yeah. And even the utilization of harmful herbicides, for example, or agrochemicals, that's an area that I think people really need to be trained on aggressively. That it's not only controlling pests and diseases, which is very vital, but also the kind of agrochemicals that we use, we need to be aware that they are the worst emitters of greenhouse gases. So the lesser we use, the better. The lesser toxic herbicides or pesticides we use, the better. Actually, if we eliminated them from our ecosystem, we'll be safer.
When we look at, let's talk about the organic ways of just trying to cover the pesticides that we use. What is the best way? Because even the organic ways that we use, some can be very detrimental when it comes to soil, when it comes to maintaining the quality of soil. So if we are moving away from pesticides and saying, all right, let's reduce the use of pesticides and start using organic manure or organic ways of doing it, what do we really need to focus on when it comes to maintaining the soil quality, doing it the right way?
Yeah, you're right, Kelvin. So the focus actually these days is about soil health. And when we talk about soil health, that's the beginning of life, I mean, for everything. And you will hear a lot of companies, including our own organization, talking about regenerative agriculture. That should be the talk, that should be the focus, so that we reduce on, utilization of or usage of pesticides and focus on other alternative methods of producing food that is safe. But also look at the soil health. Because again, when we use these herbicides or pesticides, yes, they end up in the soil. They end up, even the plants that take them up, they end up still going to the soil. And they kill a lot of microbes that are in the soil that help, a lot of decomposition work, a lot of soil structure interventions determining the soil texture. So there's a lot that is beneficial in terms of focusing on the soil health, but also on the water quality and amounts. They are very key because you need then both the soil and the water to produce a good crop. Yeah, so it's all the dimension to do with how do we focus on ensuring that our soils are regenerative, they are well maintained, the soil fertility levels, and even the microbial life of the soil is maintained. And the water is also an aspect that needs to be considered. Do we have enough water? What's the quality of that water? And then what types of crops do we grow? The varieties, high yielding or drought resistance, and all that needs to be put into space so that we then talk of a system that is able to support itself without necessarily relying on utilization or usage of heavy toxic pests.
All right. Now, we have a new government, of course, as a country, that the government focusing on agriculture as one of their main key agendas. Now, when you look at the focus on agriculture, what impact will this have now to the agriculture sector, especially in terms of a farmer, that smallholder farmer in the village, or who is doing just little agriculture? What impact will this have from where you sit or your view going forward?
So at the farmer level, you get subsidized fertilizer, for example, or subsidized seeds to plant. Then that ensures that you spend less in producing food, and that will encourage actually more people to go into food production. Because what again discourages people is you don't have enough money to buy seeds, to buy inputs like fertilizer. So with this kind of subsidies, that goes handy in ensuring that more farmers go into the farms because the price of inputs is now lower. But also what needs to be considered in perspective of that is, what about the market for this food when it's produced? We've seen farmers crying that the prices that are set, for example, a bag of maize does not even break even. So that needs to be factored in, that once these farmers have embarked to produce this food, how then do we remunerate, or how do we determine the prices that are paid to the produce that they have produced? So let it be a price that is admirable, a price that is attractive to support the farmer to break even. I mean, take care of the costs that have gone to producing this food, and something extra in terms of profit to be able to support this farmer to go back to the farm again. And that needs to go a long way, even infrastructure wise also. I mean, if we produce a lot, we need to have like enough silos. The cereals and produce board needs to enhance the storage of this food so that it's available in seasons when we do not have enough, and probably in regions where enough food is not produced. And that will, I think, play a big role in
All right, now let's go back. Let me take you back, because we had spoken about COP27. So now, it's the month of November has ended. We've finished COP27. So what are we expecting to see after this conference ends? What are we expecting to see? Because they usually happen once a year. So what are we expecting to see, even as a country or globally? What are we expecting to see?
Yeah, I think if you listen to the discussions in the COP27, there's a lot of call to action. So I'm looking forward to a state where probably in the next coming 1 year, we will see more action, in terms of people investing into renewable energy, for example, people investing into, trying to combat the climate change effects, and also supporting more farming communities to adapt to the climate change impacts. So alongside, supporting farmers or the common people to adopt, it will be a call to action, but also in investing more into ways of reducing greenhouse gas emissions from whichever operations that we operate, whether it is at farm level, at industrial level, at agricultural level, at construction level, at whichever level. So we need, I think, what I'm expecting is to see more action in terms of what needs to be done to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and also supporting farmers more to adopt into the effects that have come out of the changing climate.
Yeah. All right, even as we are about to come to a close, now let's look at areas in the environment, in environmental conservation, where the new government can focus on, even as we forge on.
Yeah, so for me, what I see, of course, they've started at a good note. So in terms of, the focusing on the farmer, focusing on the more food to be produced, but also a lot of effort towards ensuring that there's more planting of trees. And I like what I've seen in the past. For example, I know, like, currently there is a commitment from, for example, the parliamentarians who are scouts, we have been part of that team. We saw the other day that Kenya won the bid to host the World Scouts Parliamentary Union Assembly in 2025. And next year, in 2023, they are hosting the African World Scouts Parliamentary Assembly. So what I hear is more of themes along environmental conservation, bringing youth into playing a role in environmental conservation. And of course, what I've seen also involving even the Scouts movement in planting trees. And what I've also seen is the documentation from the Ministry of Environment about the probably forests that have been dilapidated that need to be rehabilitated. So if private companies county governments took it upon themselves that we need to ensure that we have extensive tree planting and tree growing, basically, not just planting, not going throwing a tree in the forest, but just ensuring that those trees are growing. But also, we have seen organizations these days, actually including our own organization, trying to embrace what we call adopt a tree. We have so many children in school these days. If we wanted to plant a tree in a school or in a playing ground or somewhere where there is a forest, ensure that we attach a tree to a student so that they adopt and take care of that tree, so that as it grows, as they go through level to level, they ensure that that tree that they have adopted is also growing. So there are so many initiatives that are available that the government can focus on in terms of environmental conservation, in terms of food security, in terms of renewable energy. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. You can give us your parting shot and then we can conclude.
Yeah, Kelvin, I want to really appreciate and say that I want to echo the same, discussions around the COP27, that I think we've talked a lot about climate change effects, the impacts of climate change, but it is time to really act. As individuals, as corporate organizations, as governments, we need to do something, and we need to really put our feet on the ground and be able to see and measure actually what we need to do towards combating climate change. Otherwise, the world will be heating up day after day, and it will no longer be business as usual. And we need to be here. We need our generations to be here. As we exit, we need the coming generations to be able to enjoy what we've enjoyed ourselves. So it's a responsibility of each individual to be able to take care of the environment, ensure that we reduce on greenhouse gas emissions and promote, activities that kind of ameliorate the current impacts of climate change, but also enhance our food production so that we do not have to see people dying that they don't have enough food to eat, when we already have even more produced and more went to waste in some regions. Yeah.
Thank you so much for giving us your time and contributing to this conversation. All right, there you have it. You've heard it from Michael himself. All right, so we are going to conclude AgriTalk there. This edition is over, and my name is Kelvin Nyakundi. Let's meet next time, same place, right here on KTN Farmers TV. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.